I want to talk about fighting. There's been a lot of fighting in our world. You know, this last week we watched the Capitol get attacked and vandalized. We've mobilized troops for this coming inauguration. Anybody nervous? Anybody on edge? I saw some crazy stuff on the news. You can go to the next slide. I got a picture. You're going to love it. Oh, this guy. You ever seen this guy? Now, when I first saw this, I was like, this is the most dedicated, hardcore Texans fan I've ever seen in my life. No? Sadly, that is not who he is, right? You know, we saw some really crazy stuff happen in our Capitol, and what we saw is we saw people going beyond the elements of protest, beyond the elements of disagreement. I mean, look at this guy. What is this guy fighting for? It feels like our whole nation is just in tension and in conflict, and it seems to never really die down. There's this back and forth. I'm stuck in a loop. It's like this endless conflict, terrible cycle that I can't seem to break. And every time I think I get out, somebody sucks me right back in, or something crazy like this happens. And what happens? You go right back into this whole loop, this whole cycle. And it's so hard to break. And I have to ask the question of, like, what's driving this? Community has become so delicate and fragile and easily broken because the truth is that there's more reason to be offended than to be befriended. There is far more reason to call out rather than to call in. And there is a deep-seated lurking suspicion below the surface about what others believe about the issues that are most important to us. Very suspicious. Some of this is built on previous hurts. Some of this is built on media projections. Some of it leads to drawing stark territorial markings about who's in and who's out. And this is not just politically or socially, but this even happens in circles of faith. I've been asking this question. It just kind of struck me this week after all of the chaos and the nonsense. And I saw so many different organizations and churches and faith groups and circles of faith, people coming out talking about how they condemn the actions. We condemn this, we condemn that. And we should stand against things that are wrong. But the same realization for me was like, when did it become our job as the church to condemn things? When did it become our job for us as the church to tell everybody more about what we are against and what we condemn rather than what we stand for and what we're really about? We are the church, and we welcome all. We have a place of belonging. We are here to help people satisfy that deep need to belong. And on that journey, they will find faith. They will find hope and healing that we know only Jesus gives. We have an exclusive claim that is the most radically inclusive thing in this whole planet. There is only one real, true way to God, and that is Jesus. That's an exclusive claim. There are no other ways. All roads do not lead to the same destination, unfortunately. A lot of people will tell you that in our pluralistic society, all the different roads, you can just kind of pick a path, and eventually, you probably kind of get to the same place. But that's not how Jesus talks. And if you read the words of Jesus, he doesn't at all talk like that. He says there is the way, he is the truth, the life. That's exclusive. And yet, that is available for everyone, no matter what the boundaries. And we can't put up walls so that people can't gain access to that. So we'll go back to our original question. Everybody's fighting, so are we supposed to fight? I gave you a lot of examples of, well, I probably kind of broke the mold on a few things for you. I'm tearing down the walls today. I'm fired up. So are we supposed to fight? And if so, how do we fight and who do we fight? Our fight is not against people. You have to see beyond the distraction. You know people like this. Maybe they're a little bit prickly, okay? Hard to talk to, kind of spiky. It's probably because of the attacks and the abuses that they've suffered in their past. You know, that really could be because of past trauma, past hurt, places of insecurity, and now they're kind of just spiky. They're hard to talk to. And so what happens? Satan drives everybody away from them. What do? They say something kind of spiky, and you look at the surface and get distracted. What do? I got no time for that. When in fact, what God might be calling you to do is look beyond the initial distraction and get to the purpose of why you're there. This happens all the time with all sorts of weird personality quirks and passive-aggressive behavior, or I could probably go on and on with tons of examples of people that you know who probably seem to be pushing you away, and yet the thing that God wants for them is people that'll press in, people that will see beyond the surface level. You know, our Texans fan needs somebody to see beneath the silly fur horns that he's wearing, and underneath all of the paint on his face, and underneath all of the geometric tattoos all over his body, and needs to see beyond the symbols that he's carrying of the flag, who's probably hurt and probably feels like they don't belong. How much of that violence that we saw could be a result of people who feel like they don't belong? And so what do? They grab to the craziest things you've ever heard of. Right? And sometimes we have to be really honest about ourselves is, are we welcoming those people as crazy as they are? Are we being able to welcome them in so that God can transform their life? Here's a couple things I'm going to tell you don't work. Ready? Yelling louder or arguing more doesn't work. What we have to do is listen. If people are not willing to listen to you, you being louder is not helpful. God's in control. God's working on people's hearts. God is up to something and has good plans for the people around us. We need to look for what God's doing in their life. That's how you look beyond the distraction and into purpose. You need to see what God's doing in someone's life. Rest in God's strength and provision. He's got us. You know, ultimately, my job here is not to tell you what to believe. I know that sounds crazy to some of you. I thought that was your only job. We made this guy a pastor? What were we thinking? But what I want you to know is my job is not just to sit here and tell you what to believe, but is really to bear witness to what I've seen, to the God that I know, and that is your job too, is to bear witness. What I want you to focus on is the opportunity that we have with the people around us in our world that is hurting, that is lost, that is broken. I pray that this is not a year where everyone's fighting. My prayer and my heart for what God's doing in our world and the opportunity that I'm seeing, 2021 needs to be about a year where everybody belongs. And that needs to be the thing we focus on. We cannot get distracted by the nonsense. We got to see the purpose in what God's up to in our culture. That's hard, and we're probably going to make mistakes along the way, and we're probably going to give into the distractions. You're probably going to say something dismissive to those prickly people in your life. But I want you to come back to this, and I want you to think about how you driving a sense of belonging in people can lead them to a place of belief. You have a role to play. God has done something specific in your life to equip you and to uniquely place you to share your faith. And that's what being a Christian is all about.